we talk about how you sold your first screenplay? What was it?
Oh,
What
okay,
was it
sure.
about?
I had been writing television. I had been writing episodic television and getting assignments and things, but I didn't get on staff on a show. It was hard to do. It was at the time where they gave out more freelance assignments on TV shows than they do now, but still, the whole point was to get on staff on a show, and I was just finding that wasn't necessarily the direction everything was moving in. So I decided to start writing screenplays because I always loved movies, and that's kind of what I started off wanting to do, but I felt TV would be kind of a good way to enter the business and something a little more accessible, which I think it was. But I started just writing a screenplay. So I took a couple of courses about writing a screenplay. I took a great class called Writer's Boot Camp, which I ended up teaching for a long time, a few years after I took it. And I wrote a few scripts and sort of got on I think they got attention, a few got optioned, things happened. And then ultimately I just kept writing spec screenplays. You know, I mean, you have to keep writing if you're not getting assignment work and you have the time to write, to write on spec, you have to keep cranking things out. So at that particular point in the movie business, a lot of this was a little bit after the big $1 million spec sales and all of that, where like everything was selling. But I sort of missed that wave. But high concept comedies were kind of in. They were you could sell them. They had to be good. They had to be a good idea, but they were saleable. Now it's different. I mean, now the studios are making fewer of them. It's harder to sell those now unless there's like a big star attached to it. But back then, that was just kind of like the bread and butter. I mean, everybody wanted those scripts. So I wrote a script called Manhattan Transfer, which was about a New York radio shrink, sort of a shock jock of a radio shrink, who on one day starts taking on the neuroses of all of his callers. At the time that he's making the very week he's making the leap from local radio to national television as a shrink, as a TV shrink. And it's just the story of how he gets through this period of time, and he hooks up with his old graduate school girlfriend, who turns out to be his young son's school psychologist, and she kind of helps him as a psychologist on this journey of getting through this crazy week when he's taken on the transference of all of his clients' neuroses. And his whole thing as the shock jock is neuroses are all in your head. There is no such thing. And now he's cursed by the ghost of Sigmund Freud. And he comes to him in the middle of the night and says, you're really hurting people by your saying that there's no such thing as neuroses. So you're going to start feeling everything that all of your people are feeling and that you've been mocking all this time. And then he wakes up and it starts to happen. And it's a very, very funny script and a very funny story. And it was ultimately bought at the time by Davis Entertainment for 20th Century Fox. And I worked with Fox and Davis developing the script. I did different drafts of the script. They kept reoptioning it, and ultimately it just sort of never went anywhere after that. So I got it back. But it's just a great big broad character comedy. So I'm hoping one day it'll find its place. But that was the first sale, and very shortly after that I had my second sale, which was just kind of amazing that it all happened at once. It was an independent film. It was a spec script that I wrote called Who's on First. It was a romantic comedy, and it was ultimately bought by an independent film company, and they made the film under the title If You Only Knew. So like within like 1 year or 6 months or something, I was able to sell these two scripts. The film that was made, it took a little while to get made. It took a few years, over the course of a few years, to get made and released. But yeah, that was really kind of a fun beginning. And the whole point is when you sell something is to be able to parlay that into selling something else. So I got a lot of meetings at the time, and I sort of got on the radar of things. And you try to work that, try to get other work from it and all of that. So it was good.
When you talked about previously having these scripts that you've written, but they sort of in their fifth life, what are you doing to know if it's the right time? You said it's sort of whatever's out in the ether. Are you looking through the news every morning?
Well, it's more a general sense, but I mean, I think, for example, the script Manhattan Transfer, which I ended up changing the title to Reverse Psychology over time. There are different places now that will make. Maybe it's not a feature film. Maybe it's a movie for Crackle or some internet or streaming service that's starting to produce their own comedies. yeah, there's that whole concept. Like, what else is out there where you can now sell this kind of material and, you know, just update it for, you know, for where we are today. There's that. I wrote a script a long time ago called Red Hot Mamas, which was about 3 women of a certain age, single women of a certain age, who end up winning a trip to a Caribbean island, and they take the trip together, not realizing that they're landing there smack in the middle of college spring break. And it's a story about how these women in their late 40s end up being pursued by these college guys who are 20. And you know, it's a little American Pie-ish and whatever. But that was, you know, it was a funny script. You know, didn't sell back then. Now there's this whole, you know, big proliferation of you know, women's comedies, broad women's comedies, from Bridesmaids to Bad Moms. They're making Bad Moms Christmas coming up this year. There's a movie that was at Sundance, I think, called Mom's Lunch Out, or something about Mom's Great Lunch or something, that got a lot of attention. So we're out again with Red Hot Mamas. We've retitled it MILFs, and it's what I did was I rewrote it a little bit ago, and I kind of cut the young guys a bit and sort of amped up the women's roles more. So it's really the women's story. The guys are there, the story is similar, but I kind of really focused on the women more and did more work on them. And we're out with it again. You know, trying to get interest in it because fun women's comedies, women empowerment comedies, women of a certain age, you know, doing crazy things. There's a market for it now. So there's that kind of thing. So that was something that evolved over time. You know, Bridesmaids was just, you know, it could have been a one-off, and it turned out to be something that really affected and changed, you know, the film business in a way, the comedy business, and certainly Melissa McCarthy from that. She changed a bit of the face of comedy. What studios are making, you know, when it comes to comedy, you know. So there's a new, you know, so there's that, you know, there's that kind of thing that's out in the zeitgeist. So basically, sometimes, you know, if it's based on a true story, you know, sometimes, like I have the rights to a book called Rescuing Riley, which is about a true story about a man who rescues a dog from a canyon, and how he saves the dog's life, and how the dog kind of saves his life emotionally as a result of it. It's a wonderful book, and we've been out with it trying to get it set up and all of that. And then A Dog's Purpose was coming out, and I said to my agent, you know, A Dog's Purpose is I read the book. It's a, you know, great book. I knew the film would be good. I had a feeling it would do well, get a lot of attention. I said, everybody's going to be looking for their dog movie. You know, this might be a good time to really put a push on Rescuing Riley, so it's out there again in a bigger way. Yeah, that kind of thing, you know, because it is a roller coaster, and you never know. I mean, some scripts that I've written, some screenplays, they're dated, and, you know, the topic just doesn't work anymore, and, you know, you just put them aside.